about his presence and what he could help you with. But I mean, the chances of you like seeing him in the hallways are fairly low, and I don't think he's just kind of there in his office if you would need him.
Thank you. I mean, it's better to hear this directly from you than reading in the Valley News.
I just have a comment for our students. And I just want to thank all three of you for being the voices that are bringing the news from Lebanon back to us. And I'm really proud of your commitment and involvement to stay connected to the Grantham community. I'm especially proud of your safe practices. And I think when this is all over and there is a new normal, you're going to have many stories to tell.
Any other questions from the board tonight? Okay. All right. Thank you both. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you or hear you. All right. So our next agenda item will be the special education and food service state reports. And so those are in the board packet. And anything else to Sydney that you want to mention to the board?
Just very quickly, for the people who are listening in, these are just reports that we get every year from the state. It's our food inspection report, as well as 2 different special education reports. So of course, GVS passed with flying colors. We had some very minor things to do in the kitchen. We threw out 2 cutting boards, and we bought a new thermometer for the dishwasher. But other than that, we're looking great. And then in terms of special education, I think you'll all share the pride that I have that we are 100% in compliance with all of our timelines for eligibility and identification. And then the other report is the disparity report, in case we have any racial, ethnic, gender disparity in terms of special education. And we are well below the threshold. We're in the 1% range, and anything 3% above is considered a disparity, and we don't come any place close to that. So once again, we're doing a great job. Many thanks to Madeline Crudo-Burke and our case managers for all of the hard work that they're doing. It really even though this is a 2-page report, there's, years of work and minutes and parent contact that go behind this. So the only thing that I'll need you to do as a board is to accept each report individually.
Any questions or discussion points from the board? I would just echo and say thank you on behalf of the board to the food service folks and to the special ed folks for their work on this. Okay, so we would need a motion to accept the special education state report.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion from Denise and a second from Leslie. And we'll do a roll call. If you're in favor of accepting the special education state report, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
And Brittany? Aye. All right. And next we would need a motion to accept the food service state report.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Christine. And so if you're in favor of accepting the food service state report, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine?
Aye.
Denise? We'll see if we can get Denise. Ed?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
Brittany? Aye. Oh, Denise?
I'm back. Aye.
All right, thank you. Sorry if my words get a little mixed up tonight. Our the espresso machine was down at work, which meant that all day long I got to say, our espresso machine is broken, so we don't have any espresso drinks or steamed milk drinks. And I said it 900 times, and I think my mouth is worn out. So I apologize if my words get a little tumbly tonight. All right, our next item on the agenda is the discussion of our instructional model. So in keeping with, as we have been, what we've been doing for the last 13, 14 months now, we're just going to check in and get a report on how the instructional model is doing, especially now that we're in our second week of the 5-day model.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Mhm.
did we have to approve the special ed report? Because I don't think
That
we
was
did.
we did that first, and then we did the food service.
I thought we did 2 food service.
She definitely said special ed. That was the one that I said I first.
And I think we have, just checking. And Brenda, if you don't have a motion for us for special ed, please feel free to stick that in the chat. But I think we have that one. Okay.
All right, whenever you're ready for me to go, I will start presenting.
All right, Brenda says we're all set.
Okay.
So go for it.
Great. So I'm just going to go through this the same way that we have gone through it every month to this point. Just need to get rid of the chat so I can see. There we go. So so we're talking about our first, sorry, my computer's acting up. So we had the board decision of 5-day in person. Our first 5-day week of April 26th to 30th went really well. Things are going really well this week as well. We did have 2 days with difficult coverage, just to let you know, but we have 2 additional staff members who have been taking on several hours each day. That was something that the board approved last time, and those have actually been a huge help. We increased our custodian by 10 hours a week to keep up with cleaning. So with the new schedule, we do have to increase cleaning in terms of getting classrooms cleaned after snack and after lunch and during recess. So those 10 hours a week are also helping a lot. And then just some updated CDC guidance. We started talking about this in the March meeting and then April, May. So what I've done is I've only added new information in red, which is what I also did in April. So we've continued to have these 5 layers of mitigation components. I'm not going to read through everything that doesn't have red. We're just going to go to the things that are different. So there is a surveillance testing. I think last time what I had was there's a lot of talk and no action, but now there is action with surveillance testing. There's a program being implemented through the New Hampshire DOE, and we're working through the requirements to see if it'll be a possibility for GBS. There are some layers that we're working through in terms of needing to, there are requirements to hire somebody, there are requirements to work with a lab, there are different reporting procedures. So we're still sort of navigating that to see if it's something that we can do. We're at an advantage because we're already CLIA certified to be able to do the testing on site. So we've got the first hoop finished, which we did way back when. And if this works for us, we will get the Binax cards where we would be able to do some on-site rapid testing. And that could be, there are 2 different layers. We could do symptomatic and asymptomatic testing. So we're exploring both of those. In terms of vaccination, the vaccination is moving along and Pfizer is approved for teens. I read this week that 12 to 15 group is going to be moving forward. And there are also several trials for kids under 12. As of yesterday, 59% of New Hampshire adults have had the first dose, and I believe 26% are now fully vaccinated. So again, I'm just going to go to what's new. Then where everything's the same in terms of masks, distancing, hand washing, cleaning, contact tracing with isolation and quarantine. There is a change that I'm going to request the board make a change, which has to do with Elizabeth Strobridge's public comment. In terms of the quarantine requirements and question regarding travel guidance, There was a statewide superintendent's meeting with the commissioner yesterday, and he said that the official word from the state is that all schools must be in compliance with the DHHS guidelines. And from what we saw after April break in terms of testing and safety and the information that we have from our progress monitoring committee, I'll be asking you to move forward with a vote to change our New England guidance to the DHHS guidance. And I do want to say, since we're talking about this with Ms. Strobridge's comment, family travel is still something different. So we're going to be reviewing our attendance policy later. And there is a 5-day family travel form that would need to be filled out. So they're two different things. So there is family travel that would happen at any time, COVID or not. And then here we're talking about the difference in the quarantine requirements. So just to do a quick review, in March, I'm sorry, this should read April. I didn't change that. In the April meeting, we were at 78.8% and substantial. Currently, we are at 99.6%, and which is still in the substantial category. And that's the total number of cases per 100,000. Our test positivity rate in April was 3.65, which was in the low range, and current is 4.95%, and that is still in the low range. We would kick into moderate if we go above 4.99. So if we hit 5% or above, we would go into moderate. And this is for Sullivan County, obviously. So this is where we are still in terms of the substantial transmission for Orange elementary schools, physical distancing of 3 feet distance between students and classrooms, cohorting recommended when possible. So just some other things to do a quick update. We do have 2 tents up. We've had some trouble initially with some high winds. They did do new poles and ropes and they've been reinstalled. So we're hoping that they are good to go. We do know that classes and kids love being outside. The plans are proceeding really well with Civil War Day and 6th grade graduation that we talked about last meeting. So those are going on as planned. Our Safe Return to School Committee will have at least 4 sessions to prepare to propose plans for the 21-22 school year. I've had a really great response from the staff interested in looking at our operational procedures and things that we can improve on for next year. So I'm excited to get that going in June. The Progress Monitoring Committee continues to meet at least once per month to stay on top of our current information. We will be releasing a parent guardian survey, very similar to the ones that we did last summer, but obviously looking at reflecting on this year and thinking about needs going into 21-22 school year so that we can have that information for the planning process. I hope to have that going out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. One of the things that's been a big topic around the state is it's really unclear as to whether or not schools will be required to offer a remote option. And it depends on what the governor does with the emergency orders that did require schools to provide a remote option to families. So the governor has lately been letting the expiration dates on the emergency orders go, and they've been expiring. We don't know for sure if that will happen with this part of the emergency order, but we need to stay aware of the fact that there could continue a requirement to do some kind of remote option next year. Although I have to tell you that most school districts that I've been in touch with are not planning on a remote option. They're planning on everybody coming back 5 days. So we're just going to have to see what the state's going to do about that. And that is our quick update. What kind of questions do you have for me?
Cindy, I have a quick question about the remote option. Would this be allowing a district to request a remote option if situations change, or are we talking about allowing a remote option to exist, requiring or?
So we're going to be looking over the summer at a policy of what the board wants to do long-term in terms of a remote option. As of right now, we only have 11 students who continue to be fully remote. Everybody else has returned to GVS. So initially, we haven't thought that we would need one. If the governor requires us to have one, and if families still want that option based on the pandemic next year, then that might be something we have to explore. If it is not required, then families will most likely choose to homeschool and use VLAX or another program that's available to them for free through the state.
Other questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick thank you. That was really helpful, Sydney. Very thorough. Thanks.
I think that's the fastest one so far.
Unfortunately, we're getting used to this.
Sydney, have you heard any just anecdotal stuff of that first kind of week and 2 days that we've had of the 5 days, either from teachers or from students or from families?
Well, the common theme, there were a few common themes. So one of them was, I can't believe how fast the days are going by with the new schedule. You know, when you're looking at a new schedule and we're going and we have different specials, everybody felt like the days were really flying by. And then the second thing that I very consistently heard was the level of exhaustion on Friday, on that first Friday, when the kids made it through the first full week. There were a lot of tired kids and teachers on Friday night and through Saturday. I heard a lot about like several families who needed some Saturday recovery time, but no wonder, right?
All right. Thank you. I appreciate the update and all of the work that you guys are continuing to do. So the next item on our agenda is another just presentation looking forward, the summer programming for this coming summer.
Yeah, I'm just going to pinch hit for Kristen a little bit because she's listening in. She will do a little bit more thorough explanation in June, but she has done a fantastic job with staff designing a summer program that is looking at a nature-based and outdoor education program. So definitely along the philosophy of having summer school really not look like school. So still getting in all the skills that we need, still making sure that we address any learning gaps that might be there, that we don't let kids slide over the summer, but with a real outdoor environmental focus to it. So the May PD day will be used primarily to plan for kids and what they need and what kind of skills we need to work into those programs. It is, as we discussed, going to be a more costly summer program, but I know that that's what we all intended because we want to catch more kids. So we have budgeted $15,000 usually for the summer program. Our estimate right now is that this year's summer program will cost about $30,000. So our plan will be to supplement with the ESSER funds, you know, because this is really COVID related in terms of making sure that we keep everybody on the good track that they're on. Prescott Farm is also going to be coming to plan on that May PD day too, and they've been wonderful. So I think it's going to be a really incredible program for kids. So thank you to Mrs. Reed.
Is this separate from Title I programs?
It is. So we're not doing anything specific with Title I, but we are doing, you know, students who have, for example, IEP summer programming will still be part of this programming. And then we're going to start readdressing Title I when we come back in the fall.
So no Title I funds are being used for this program?
Not for summer, no. The other thing that we're looking at that is also exciting is a design for speech services over the summer to be run as speech clinics. So you'll be hearing more about that, and it's just a really wonderful way to go.
And from what I've heard, it sounds like a lot of districts are going to use some of their ESSER monies for summer programs. So that sounds like it's pretty common.
Yeah, I think, you know, as everybody's getting, you know, we've been pretty consistent since November, but not all districts have. And I think just making sure that you don't lose any progress that you've made with the kids and that you can just keep going into what next year I think everybody's looking at as a real recovery year is making sure that we can stay on this trajectory.
not sure if my microphone's on or not. Sydney, I just pulled up Kristen's principal's letter, and when she was talking about the invitations for students to participate, I think she said they were 66 invited to participate. A few have declined the invitation, and they're still waiting to hear from others. So I guess my question would be, I got to phrase this properly. How can we entice families who have declined to let them know that this is a really good and beneficial thing and help to target the needs of these kids over the summer?
Well, I think we're still working on it. And again, it was only a few who declined, but I know we're still working on it in terms of classroom teacher outreach and Mrs. Reed outreach and Mrs. Crudo-Burke outreach. All of those kind of, individual personal contacts are being made. I think that the theme of the outdoor and camp and nature is really enticing and getting everybody there. There really are just some families who are declining because they have different summer needs, or they might be traveling, or it just doesn't work in with their schedule. So we certainly understand that as well. But I know that we are trying to, as we said, catch as many kids as we can. And we're doing pretty well. I mean, that will be the biggest summer program we've ever had.
Okay. All right, we'll look forward to hearing more about it in June. So our next agenda item is the general assurances for 2021-2022, and we do need to move to accept those. Any other information or questions on that?
These are the same program assurances that you see every year in order to accept federal funds. And with the new guidelines, the board needs to officially vote to adopt the assurances before we accept any 21-22 federal grant money.
I thought it was very interesting that on page 4, item 26 says the subrecipient will comply with requirements of the Gun-Free Schools Act.
Mhm.
Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, so we would need a motion to adopt the general assurances for 2021-2022.
So moved.
So we have a motion from Ed, and we'll need a second.
Second.
Second from Leslie. And so we'll do a roll call. If you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine?
Aye.
Denise?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Leslie?
Aye.
And Brittany? Aye. All right. And our next item is the legislative review. And so I'm going to hand it over to Sydney, and we'll see how she was able to summarize and truncate a very large legislative review.
Well, first, I'm gonna take you through the Sr2 funding. So we're just gonna.
Oh, perfect. You want to do that first? Oh, yeah, that's next on my list. Sorry, I skipped
No,
right
that's
over
okay.
that. I
That's all right.
apologize. Next on our item is, or on our agenda is the Sr2 funding presentation for that.
Okay, so I just have a different slide to bring up.
Never skip funding, Brittany. What was I thinking?
Okay, so I just wanted to say, we did apply for the Sr2 funds. So we have Sr1, Sr2, Sr3. So Sr2 is where we are right now. And for those of you who love acronyms, I can just tell you that ESSER is the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. So we have received $67,510.40 for this. And this is after a lot of meetings with staff and hearing feedback and admin team. This is what we felt we really needed the most. So in terms of instruction and special education, just over almost 18,000. These are additional resources for early literacy, which we have targeted as an area of need for us right now, including additional personnel through June 11th and our summer workbooks that will be going home at the end of the year. School counseling and social emotional learning has been a big area of need that we've talked a lot about. In here, in this 13,000 is counseling for students and families and social emotional curriculum software licensing. Transportation, we actually put in a request for almost $7,000. This is the additional cleaning fee. And since there were Wednesday runs that we didn't do for GVS, according to this fund, we may be able to reimburse the district, which would just help offset the tax rate for next year. In terms of technology, almost 8,000 for online documents and signatures. There are new Wi-Fi spots inside and outside because we are spending more time outside, and it does help the car line to have that Wi-Fi out there. Website integration. We will be working more and more on integrating our website, making it more parent, guardian, and community friendly, and integrating our other systems with our website. And the MiFi hotspots that we've sent home with families. In terms of buildings and grounds, almost 19,000 for additional custodial hours, the 2 tents, the rental, the 5 new walkie-talkies that we need to make sure we have the communication that we need for everybody outside, folding tables, the storage unit that we had, because we had to clear so much out of GVS, we still have a storage unit, and then moving everything back and forth from that storage unit. And again, those kind of costs will help offset this year's tax rate for next year. Food service, we had about $1,300 additional supplies for packing food for classroom delivery. And then we requested reimbursement for the mailing expense that was above our budgeted cost for the annual meeting. So we're looking ahead at SR3. It should be coming out this month, so we need to be ready to start writing that grant. Grantham is estimated to get our biggest amount yet at $157,300. So again, we're looking at our current priority areas for the initial allocations. And for us, those are some of our struggling families and their ability to access the resources. And sometimes resources are hard to access in Grantham just because of our location to begin with. Staffing is always a need, technology, early literacy, summer programming, and our overall kind of looking at recovery for next year. So what we're looking at, and I'd love to hear some of your input, is these are the 5 main things. We do need to maintain additional personnel throughout next year for supervision and coverage. I would be interested very much in bringing on, just for next year, a half-time 0.5 FTE social worker, which would just be this 1-year position. But I really think that having that and having that kind of half-time position working in coordination with Mrs. Widman will really help our families recover and help them reconnect with the resources that they need. And I think a lot of our families don't even know yet what resources they've been missing and what they're going to need as we all get back on our feet. We will need additional paraeducators to address specific student needs. The summer speech clinic plus the additional summer personnel will be in here. And we're exploring a real big overhaul of our FM systems and our mics for classrooms. So those are the systems that we already have, but they are old, getting obsolete, where it's hard to replace things. And what we found is that having students talking with masks and trying to listen with masks is much harder. And there could be a real greater need for kids to really be able to focus and pay attention and hear that kind of articulation in class if we look at redoing that system. So I would love your feedback on our thoughts for SR3 or SR2.
Sydney, do you think we'd be able to attract a half-time social worker?
I do think we'd be able to, yeah. It's definitely an area of need, and I do know that there's a pretty decent pool out there.
I was just going to ask that if you could, it's easy to find people who have school experience.
It's not always people who have school experience, but I do think that it's not always about the school experience that's beneficial, but somebody who can really dive into our community and work with families. When we were sort of playing around with this idea, we'd like to explore the idea of this person being responsible for monthly parent education nights, small parenting groups, doing all of those kind of things, in addition to just connecting with resources and connecting with kids.
Sydney had mentioned this idea to me when we met, and so I sort of casually floated it to the question to somebody that I know in that field and said, how easy would it be to attract a part-time? And they said probably pretty easy, either for somebody who's looking for a little less or someone who has an additional private practice.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of folks in the area that do, private practice work that might be interested in partnering with, to have additional part-time work that's with an organization.
Mhm. Yeah, I really feel like we have a handle on learning and what we need to do for learning and looking at the gaps. We've done a great job with social emotional learning this year. That's going to be moving forward. I think the next step is to really look at the community-wide aspect. And I think a social worker working with Mrs. Reed and Mrs. Widman could be a huge boon to the district.
Would would there still be a role for that social emotional piece that Mrs. Buckman has had this year? Would we still have a teacher sort of take a lead on that, or would that role fill more of that need?
So we do have somebody taking over for Mrs. Buckman in social emotional learning next year. And I don't know how much that's been decided, so I won't say who it is yet, but we do know somebody is going to be taking that over. But the big work that Mrs. Buckman spearheaded for us this year with social emotional learning was to really look at how this can be a comprehensive curriculum for GVS. So we have 3 grades who are piloting the program that we think will work well for us, which is called the PATHS program. And then that in conjunction with the online software that you just briefly mentioned in the Sr2, which is called Panorama, which is going to be able to give us some data and assessments that we can use with students and with families to be able to move forward. So there's absolutely no stop to that. It's just going to become part of the fabric of what we do every day. It will be another curriculum that we offer.
I have another question. With the Sr3, I didn't see anything, well, I suppose it could be indirect, but I'm just wondering, are there any needs that the staff members have that we can meet those through the Sr3 funds?
Yeah, I think we should look at that. And there was an article that came out from UCLA this week that was one of the 5 main areas that ESSER funds are being targeted in terms of supporting staff. So we'll be talking to the staff a little bit more about what they think they need.
Do those 5 things that you just listed, do those eat up the entire 157 or no?
No, the only way that we can still have room to explore for the staff, et cetera, for what the staff needs. We still have room to explore if we do another year of tents, those kind of things. The only way that we would eat them up quickly is that these go through 2024. So if there's any like positions that we think we would need for multiple years, then it's going to be eaten up pretty quickly. For example, if we decided to stretch the social worker over 2 years, that's going to eat up that 157,000 quickly, in addition to the other things that we have there.
Sydney, you sort of touched on one of my questions, which was going to be, are there things from either the first or the second ESSER rounds that are going to need to move forward to another year that would need to then be funded? So like tents or additional cleaning or transportation.
Yeah, we're trying to keep track of that very carefully and looking at our supplies to see what we need to move forward. And right now we're okay. And lo and behold, a surprise to everybody yesterday was that we actually are getting FEMA money for more PPE. So if we need masks or cleaning supplies, no, as far as I know, that was a big surprise to everybody around the state yesterday because they had originally said no. So we're doing constant shifting of what we need and where the funding source is, but we're trying always to make sure that we are, using the funding sources, to the best benefit of the district. And that means that we might take some PPE out of one grant and have FEMA cover them. But Karen Lassard is just on a daily basis, keeping track of everything and where it's coming from.
If we did something like the social worker position, is there a chance, do you feel at all like concerned that we would be putting any risk at any of those other things that we might need? Like, would we wind up in a position where we would need tents and, not be able to do that? Or we might, would need a technology upgrade and not be able to do that? Like, would that type of position put any of those other things at risk? Or do you think there's enough either funding there or enough alternate sources for funding?
I think right now, there's no risk if we're looking at the social worker as a one-year position, and then we reassess and see if there's more funding allocation after that. Again, it's going to be if we continue, right now we have additional paras. Might be adding the halftime social worker and then the bigger summer program. If we continue all of those things for another year, that's going to start to eat up that grant. So right now, what we're doing is we are looking at the priorities for next year with a little bit of wiggle room.
Are we rolling any funds over from the first two funding source? Have we pretty much exhausted those?
We've exhausted them.
Okay.
And that's part of the process too, is that we're trying to make sure that we exhaust them before that we move to the next, which is just a better way to keep on top of all of our accounting here.
I know, and I don't know if this was the ESSER money, or if this was a different pool of money. There was some, I know for some districts, there was a question of when they were using it for personnel, there was a question of how was it getting counted as having been distributed? Like if they, you know, if those funds hadn't been paid out to an individual yet, but they were going to be used for a salary, then it wasn't, you weren't able to say that those funds had been used, even, you know, even though they were earmarked that they were going to be used for someone's salary. Is there any concern with this? And I don't think that applies as much to this pool of money, but is there any concern with, you know, potentially tying like salary or anything like that to this funding?
No. So the way that they all go through the same grants management system. So the way that they work is that you put in the grant, you get your approval to start spending, and then you do a monthly report. So basically what we would do is we would say in September, this is the salary benefits that we paid out for these positions. And then, you know, we know that we have the backup in terms of our payroll and accounting software. And then it's all those checks and balances out there. And then you just go on to the next month. So I don't see any concerns with that at all. It's the way that we already pay for people out of the IDEA grant or out of the Title I grant. So it's the way that we're already used to doing things.
And did I understand you correctly? You said that we have until what, 2024 to use it?
September 2024.
And so as part of that, do you have to, in the next month, outline what we will be using that for until 2024?
Yeah. So the clock is going to start ticking pretty quickly, because once it's out, you know, we need to start doing things in terms of writing it and getting it approved. And one of the things that is a topic is that the ESSER 3 grant requires your school reopening plan. But every New Hampshire school except for 3 are now fully reopened. So, you know, the question is, why do we have to do that? But basically, we already have our continuity of learning plan that was updated after our last board meeting. So my feeling is that we submit that, and that's our current reopening plan, with the understanding that things may change with the virus or what we need to do until September. But that's one of the requirements. I'm interested, of course, I mentioned the survey a few minutes ago. We'll be sending out the survey to parents and guardians to look at needs. So that will become part of the grant, and seeing if with that wiggle room money, if we start to readdress some of those funds and reallocate someplace else. We also have, you know, we've got a master spreadsheet, because we've also got, since you just approved the federal program assurances, we've got a whole new rollout for IDEA and Title I and Title IIA and Title IV. So we spend a lot of time looking at the best use of all of these grants and how to leverage them for the district well, where it is something additional that we need, or where it's something we can cover that helps to offset the tax rate for the next year. So we're just constantly balancing all of those things. And we will most likely be giving back more money. I can tell you, we will be giving back more money than we originally thought when we were at annual meeting time. So I don't know how much the tax rate will be lowered, but it'll be lowered a little bit, because there were things we could specifically use the grant for to start to offset those rates.
Has there been any discussion with the halftime social worker of actually just contracting that out instead of bringing on a halftime position and just using those funds to, you know, pay someone in private practice to come in as on an as needed basis?
We did look at that, and we looked at a few districts that contract out for a social worker, and the average rate is about $100 to $120 an hour. And that's in the Upper Valley. And for what we would be looking at, that would be cost prohibitive for us. So even with benefits, we would be saving money if we have this person as an employee instead of a contract service. I think we calculated that at that rate, we'd be paying somebody a salary of $130,000 a year.
I like the idea of bringing in, having that move to the reading and math interventionist, in terms of like academics and filling that gap. And then also having the potential to fill a gap for some of those social or family needs, more of the kind of reentry, because we are going to potentially have, like you said, we have 11 students right now that have been fully remote. So we're going to have a group of students that we're working with, that's a situation we've never been in before, that I could see a position like that really helping that transition. So I like the idea of both. This feels like a good pairing with some of the academic moves and plans that you guys have launched us towards for next year. It feels like that part-time social worker position would give equal importance to some of those other factors that folks are already sort of raising flags to say, hey, this is something that schools are going to really need to be aware of and put time and attention towards next year.
Yeah. And we know areas, every school is different, right? We know that we have the devices that we need. We know we have the internet that we need and those kind of things. And I believe that this is where we need to reallocate money and start to focus. And I can tell you that I know that we feel like a lot of puzzle pieces are fitting together, which feels really good in terms of the social emotional learning, the MTSS programming coming in next year, the reading and math interventionist, some changes in primary special education that will be accompanying MTSS. And it's feeling like it's really good planning again.
Any other questions or comments there? Okay. All right. Thank you. So now we will actually do a legislative review.
Okay. So I have to tell you that it's the Wild West, okay, in the legislature. So I think in previous years, I've probably taken too long going through all of the bills that are in play. So I tried to narrow it down to our top 10. Not our top 10, but the top 10 that I think that people on the board and the community would be interested in hearing about the most. So if we're looking at, and I put top 10 question because I have to tell you, I snuck more than 10 in here, but I didn't know if you would count. So some that have already passed is 401 criminal records checks by superintendents. So now criminal records checks have always had to be done by superintendents alone and the research following them. So this isn't a big deal in Grantham. However, if you're in a big district and you're hiring 50 people, until this year, until this bill passed, you weren't allowed to appoint a designee to do it. So now a superintendent is allowed to have a designee to work with the criminal records checks. Along those lines, 432 adds human trafficking to the list that will prevent employment in a school. I think and hope that one was a no-brainer. Schools will have, for 500, I think this is great. Schools will have the ability to freeze leftover foods and send them home to families with food security concerns. So that one is great. And then we do have 320, which passed, which is a graduation certificate is now conditioned upon a 70% or higher score on the US citizenship test. So I wanted to know if you wanted to talk about any of these before I go to the next set. We're good? Okay, I'll go to the next one. So we're looking, these are the ones that are in there in between House and Senate, and they're in the in-between land. So these are some that I thought would be pertinent to Grantham and to things that are happening in the Upper Valley with local districts. So HB 140 is a bill that it would grant the private right of action for bullying or cyberbullying, which would include the recovery of attorney's fees and court costs. This has passed the House and is now in the Senate committee. HB 388, which comes up, I think, every single year. It's manifest education hardship, which is another bill allowing private school contracts, and then also a right of a hearing if denial is based upon child's disability. This has passed the House and its report's been filed in the Senate. HB 282 is private schools as tuition programs, which removes the religious exception from a law allowing school districts to create tuition agreements with private schools. And it just generally further loosens the language in terms of requirements of those other schools, private or religious schools, in terms of requirements for reporting back to the public school of the home district. This has passed the House and a report is filed in the Senate. HB 69 is a bill saying granting displaying the national motto in schools. This has passed the House and is in Senate committee. This one also has in its language that if anybody sues the school for separation of church and state issues, that the board and state DOE will back them in any kind of legal action. HB 108 allows full disclosure of non-public minutes in detail unless the information itself is otherwise protected for confidentiality. This has passed the House and is now in Senate committee. And HB 581, requiring the burden of proof for special education disputes to be on the school district, so school district responsibility, and the state DOE establishing a committee to review disputes and review materials. This has passed the House and a report has been filed in the Senate. So I'm going to stop share again because that's slide 2 of 3, just to see if you have any questions about those.
I don't understand the legal term. Was it private right of action in the first one?
Right. So right now, if somebody has an issue with bullying or cyberbullying, it's held at the school level, and things may go through the DOE, or there could be a hearing at the DOE or before the state board or such things. A private right of action would mean that somebody could go get an attorney and sue the school district for negligence in failing to protect their child from bullying or cyberbullying.
Does that include somebody wanting to sue the bullier?
No, they would be only suing the school district. So it would be a private right of action that anybody could go out and find an attorney to sue the school district saying that they were negligent and failed to protect their child from bullying or cyberbullying, and seek damages, attorney's fees, and court costs through that lawsuit.
Sydney, about the national motto, is that "In God We Trust"? And so can you did you say that they're requiring it to be? No, if it's present in the school and someone sues for separation of church and state, the state will basically back up the school's right to have "In God We Trust" on the wall.
Right, and that you as a board, it specifically states you as a board can have a permanent sign made and put up in the school. And if somebody sues you for that, for separation of church and state laws, that in this bill, it says that the DOE and the state board will back you in it.
Thumbs up was I understand.
All right, Denise.
Try again. Am I on? Yeah. Kind of to tap on to Leslie's, I guess my question is, would we be required to display this motto?
No, this is just if the board chooses to put this up someplace.
Thank you.
You have the permission to do that. And you will have support if you're sued.
Okay, there's just a lot of things I'm not going to say.
Should I move on to round 3? Okay, so round 3 is the biggie. And this is where there's actually a hearing taking place right now as we speak. And these are the major bills. So there's an omnibus bill, which was under HB 1558. I'm going to a workshop on this. I think it's on May 13th, because there's a lot of intricacies to this. But this is stricter requirements for school suspensions and expulsions, requirements for school safety programs to contain a plan for responding for violent acts, and references the importance of having multi-tiered systems of support for behavior. So this will really be intricate in terms of specifically 504 and special education discipline. So there was one workshop that was titled, "You're going to need a bigger boat," which is sort of the message that they're trying to send, is that this bill is going to require a lot of changes in terms of discipline for any students, especially who are identified. The other big major bills that are happening right now is where we're talking about HB 1 or 2. It doesn't really matter which one you're talking about, which is the major budget. And that's the discussion that's happening currently. So what's happened is that several key bills have actually been rolled into the main budget. So I'm sure that you've all been reading about HB 544, which is banning the discussion of divisive top concepts, such as systemic racism or gender discrimination. And you also may have, there's been a lot about this in the press. So that would, there's also been a huge open letter that's been signed by over 200 businesses and New Hampshire institutions saying that we don't believe that this is good for New Hampshire. So an interesting turn of events is taking place where instead of trying to remove 544 from the bill, they might try to also make a public-private division, saying that, well, private businesses and private industries can, not sign on to this, but all public institutions, which would be K through 12 public schools and our university system, would have to adhere to the ban on discussion of divisive concepts. So basically, this is saying that you cannot have any instruction on systemic racism or gender discrimination. What's also rolled into there is what is being called the education property tax relief. What this really does is it isn't relief. What it is doing is it's basically downshifting the tax burden back to the local district. And this is, I think the first estimate was that if we look at the numbers that were skewed greatly because of COVID, because of students, entering districts, moving from districts, homeschooling, remote instruction, when they were in school, when they weren't in school. For example, free and reduced lunch, the enrollment in differentiated aid, school districts are going to lose a lot of money if this property tax relief goes through. There's also the debate in here about the swept tax, which is the legislature added $100 million to the swept tax to offset the swept tax, which means that actually becomes a lower number for districts. But if you're a district that's really property poor, that actually takes significant funds away from you. So if you're a property poor district, you might normally get $1 million. And because of this property tax relief, you could wind up with, 150,000. Like it really will hit districts really hard. The other thing that has been rolled into HB 1 and 2 are the education freedom accounts, which again are the voucher bills that we continue to hear about. There's one for the Senate, which is SB 130, and one from the House, which is HB 20. And those are basically, they would make New Hampshire, if they pass, they would make New Hampshire the largest voucher program in the United States. There's great concern on the side of finances in terms of these vouchers, and there's great concern in terms of equity with these voucher programs. Another thing that's a concern is that these voucher programs, we would be basically sending money, our adequacy money, to a scholarship agency in New York City, and they would be taking a fee for every one processed. So they get a lot of our tax dollars. And then they would be providing these vouchers and scholarships to people. So it's also that funneling of money that I think a lot of people are feeling uncomfortable with. One bill that is SB 135 that's trying to counter especially the 90 million cut is for school funding. There's a bill moving forward that is hoping that each district will have the ability to look at the adequacy money they would get over the past 2 years and be awarded the higher of the two amounts, so that districts aren't punished basically because of COVID changes in enrollment, because of people who everybody's eligible for free and reduced lunch. So do you get that free and reduced lunch aid? And all of those other kind of things, maybe special ed differentiated aid that you might not get because people have decided to do different programs this year. So SB 135 is a way to try and help districts not be punished for COVID and still get the adequacy money that we would need to move forward next year. And that last third slide is an earful, I know, but those are the big ones that are really being debated right now, and they're wrestling with some tough things.
Sydney, what is your sense? I mean, obviously I listen to what's going on specifically about, I won't get the one right, but the, divisive concepts conversation. Do you have any sense of what, I mean, there's a difference between what we can do as individual citizens and what we can do as a board, but I'm just curious if you could say a little bit about what we might be able to do other than the individual responsibility of letting our representatives know how we feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, is letting your representatives know how you feel. You can go online and look at that open letter. As a board, you can ask me to write something and submit it about any of these things, about anything from the divisive concepts to the motto to the, if you want your statement going forward as a board, I can submit that as we've done in the past. There are pretty easy online ways where you can go on and type in the number of a bill and just say that you are in favor or you oppose. You can check a box if you'd like to speak, and you put your name and you submit. So they've provided some pretty straightforward, accessible avenues for people to voice their opinions about these. And there's also like 200 other bills that are coming through. So these are the major ones that I think Grantham would want to know about right now.
Is there any sense on whether that divisive concepts bill is likely to pass?
So it's interesting because Sr2 has said that he's not in favor of the divisive concepts part, but to do that, he has to, amend, change, not pass the budget. It gets really complicated because it's rolled into the whole budget. And then there's also this move where they might try and change the language or amend the language to say, well, private things can do this and public institutions have to do this. So it's still very much in flux. But I'm in the signatures on that open letter are still coming in terms of, I know that the governor is very interested in being able to bring business to New Hampshire. And there are a lot of businesses who are saying this isn't good for New Hampshire. This doesn't help us attract businesses and employees. And that's what we need right now. So I think he's really taken that to heart.
The school board, and I don't know if folks saw this, but the School Board Association is having a workshop on that omnibus bill too, to sort of help break that down at the school board level, because there is so much in that one.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Brittany, was that a webinar? Do you remember?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. Yep. And the Senate Finance hearing that Sydney mentioned that's going on right now for the budget, the HB 1 and 2, they had 220 people sign up to speak. So lots of folks were speaking on that one. So I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll see and hear more about either changes that are coming down the road or sort of what the mood of the room is in terms of that one.
Yeah, the public-private debate is strong. That as it is in every legislative season too. So, even earlier when I was talking about whether or not we are required to have a remote option, the state has already signed a contract with a company called Prenda. I don't know if any of you have heard Prenda. The commissioners already signed a contract that these could be individual learning pods, private learning pods, that take adequacy money. And with a little bit of research, at our meeting yesterday, the superintendents have learned that Prenda is under investigation in Arizona for fraud, because there's no certified teachers. There's 2 companies and one takes half the money and then Prenda takes the other half for the curriculum, but it's just done in people's houses. So it's a real concern in terms of oversight of New Hampshire taxpayer dollars.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts on this? And I'm sure you guys see it. We do get the sort of weekly legislative update from the School Board Association, but those are getting big and lengthy and full right now. So I think it is good to have sort of the, thank you, Sydney, for doing the work of sort of picking out some of the ones that are either more likely to have an impact or will have a greater impact, because there are quite a few out there that I think, are working their way through, but aren't going to wind up going too far. So we don't need to spend too much time and effort on any of those.
There are already 70 that were inexpedient to legislate. Yeah, but I do want to tell you that, I have this big chart, and then we see what moves forward, and I have them color coded. So I decided today that this is like my March Madness. So that's when it starts. And like, this is my bracket. So I'm not a basketball person, but this is the bracket that I follow at this time of the year.
You are not alone in the state of people who do that with New Hampshire politics. All right. Any other questions or thoughts on that for the legislative review?
I'll just say it sounds like we all do what we're already doing, which is paying attention and keeping informed. And as certain parts of what you shared with us, Sydney, move forward, we probably will have more conversation about if we want to write letters and that sort of thing, because I have a feeling some of us have strong feelings, but it's a little early to maybe weigh in just yet.
Yeah, there's still a lot in flux, and there is still a lot in that in-between stage.
And you can, like Sydney mentioned, and the School Board Association usually does send out a link for being able to log in to do the, support or oppose on bills. And, please do, you can check that you are an elected official, because we all are elected officials. And then it does ask you who you're representing. So you can just say that you're representing yourself. So you can put both of those things in there. And then say if you did want to, speak or not. So. Okay, our next agenda item is a discussion for the playground committee.
All right, so as we haven't yet sort of recapped our vote from the playground. So as we move into next year, to hit the ground running, we did have a majority vote in favor of the playground bond. It just wasn't enough to meet the 60%. But we're very close. I think we're only 21 votes short. So we need to start mobilizing and thinking about what will happen for next year. So the 2 things that I'd like to ask you is if you're all right with reinstating fundraising, or if you'd like to continue to hold off. That would be the first question. And the second one, in terms of planning and moving forward, there are basically 2 paths we can move forward with. One would be we move forward with the bond issue as it was this year for the 22-23 budget. Probably doing, a little bit of a harder sell than we did this year. This year, I know that the sentiment was we should put it out there and have the taxpayers weigh in. But I think if we're moving into next year, we know that this is something that probably can't wait much longer. And then the other option would be, we do have money in the playground account. We could put out an RFP or an RFQ for a landscape architect to complete comprehensive plans. And by that, I really mean plans and specs that we could actually put out to bid to a contractor. So really complete, site plans, every single last detail. The plans, from the estimate that I've gotten from people, would cost about somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $40,000 for that total complete set of plans, because that's also going to include all the surveying, all of the Where is the septic? What do we need to move? The design, everything. It could, the con is that it could overall potentially cost more to do it this way, since it's not one comprehensive project. We might, wind up paying one person for this and then contracting it out and having that other person working with somebody else's plans. There's always the danger that that will cost more in the long run. The pro would be it could give more accurate cost information and design information to the community, which we know that a lot of people have asked about this year. So those are kind of the two things on the table with looking forward to that next strategic plan step of getting a better playground for GVS. So if we could start addressing maybe fundraising first, and then we can move on to what you might like to do about plans or no plans.
I'll jump in. I'm comfortable with us, I think, reinstating fundraising within our community. I think given that the vote was close and a lot of parents spoke in support and of the need for it sooner rather than later, I think there's an appetite and people can do as little or as much as they are comfortable with.
I think I would agree. I mean, if we're going to go back for the bond next year, I think at the very least we should, focus on some fundraising before then, just to, help with that effort.
Yeah, I agree.
So the money that we have in the fund now could be used for some of these proposals for costs. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we do have enough to cover the cost of really comprehensive plans. And then we could take those plans and get a more accurate cost estimate for the bond prior to next February, which is when you would be approving that warrant article.
It seemed like a lot of the feedback and the questions we got during that process was would be answered by that. And I think part of that sort of, community relationship and showing that we really took that to heart and heard folks, concern about sort of going into the project without a true sense of how much it was going to cost, just having based it on, similar projects in the area, not on numbers that we had been given specifically. I think it would be a really nice, even if it does wind up costing more long-term, I think we'll get farther in terms of creating that community relationship and answering some of those questions for people. That would be really positive. And I mean, frankly, it'll give us more information to work on too, and maybe something to use to sort of drum up some more fundraising and some support, like to say, here's what it could be, here's what we're looking at. Like, here's, if you think of some of that fundraising, when they show you the picture of what the fancy building is going to look like, if you can see what you're actually helping to raise money for or to fund, it makes it a little bit more real.
Yeah. And I mean, in my opinion, this work has to be done regardless, whether it's done after the bond's issued or before the bond. I mean, the only way you're going to get contractors to provide accurate estimates is if you provide them full plans up front. The more gray area you provide them, the higher their bids are going to be, because they need to compensate for that. So I think there's a better chance of spending the money now may save us down the road than end up costing us more.
I agree with Ed, and that's what I was thinking as well, that it's going to be more expensive the longer we wait. And I don't know if this would be useful information or not, but I wonder if there's a way of kind of estimating how many days we can't use the playground for the kids in a typical year.
I'm sure we could, because we could do emails for indoor recess again. And search.
And right now it's all of the days for part of the playground. There's part of it that is roped off and they can't use it all because there's a climbing structure that's not safe anymore. So for part of the playground, it's all of the days.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would be comfortable with starting to put our toes back in the water of fundraising and moving forward with getting some plans in place.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts on that?
Would just be two different votes. One would be
Yep.
to reinstate fundraising and one would be about the plans.
Okay, so we would need a motion to reinstate fundraising for the playground project moving forward.
Moved.
Second,
I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Denise. And so if you're in favor, please say aye. And if you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
Aye.
Denise,
aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
and Brittany, aye. All right, and then we would need a motion to move forward to get it'll be an RFP, correct?
It'll be an RFP because we're not just doing qualifications, we're actually requesting a product.
Yep. So move forward with an RFP for the design for the playground project.
Moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Christine. So if you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
and Brittany, aye. All right.
And just, I see a bunch of people on the playground committee who are here with us tonight, so get ready. We're going to be meeting again.
Thank you, Playground Committee. All right. Our next agenda item are nominations. So we are taking action on at least 2 nominations that have come forward to the board. So Sydney, I'll let you introduce and nominate those folks.
I'm very excited to nominate a new special education case manager teacher. This is for Pat Canning's retirement, who we're sad to see go, but happy to see her off into retirement. And this person is Kelly O'Reilly, who will be joining us from the Plainfield School District. So we're very excited to have Kelly come on board. In addition, she has also agreed to work with our summer program so that she can get on board and get to know the kids and get to know GVS even before the year starts. So we're additionally excited about that. In addition, I have a nomination for a reading math interventionist. This is for Lynn Wallace's position that is now reading and math. And I am happy to nominate Samantha Hutchins, our grade 1 teacher, to the reading math interventionist position. She is going to bring not just a wealth of knowledge about reading and math, but she's been doing a lot of work on being an interventionist, and certainly her history at GVS is stellar, and we know that she's going to be the perfect person to move into this role. This is not an official nomination, but I'm also really excited that Fran Scheller has agreed to be our part-time secretary next year. So I'm sure everybody knows Fran, and we're so excited that she's going to be back with us on a more permanent basis. So good news all around there.
I feel like she keeps trying to tiptoe away from us, and then we just
No, we're not
we
letting
like
her.
sneak her back in.
Yeah.
All right, so we need a motion to accept the nomination of Kelly O'Reilly for special education teacher and case manager.
So moved.
Second,
All right, so I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Denise. And so if you're in favor, please say aye. And if you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
Aye.
Denise,
aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Brittany, aye. All right, welcome aboard, Kelly. And we need a motion to accept the nomination for Samantha Hutchins for reading and math interventionist.
So moved.
So moved emphatically.
Second.
All right, so Leslie made a motion emphatically and was seconded by Christine. And so if you're in favor, please say aye. And if you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye. This is Barrett's
And Brit-
favorite teacher.
And Brittany, aye. All right. I would say welcome aboard, Mrs. Hutchins, but you're already here, so.
Right. So we are still, in terms of hiring, we are still pending final decisions for library media specialist. So we're working in the final stages of that. And then also because Mrs. Hutchins is moving into this new position, we will be advertising tomorrow after tonight's meeting for another classroom teacher.
And I would just like to say thank you to the committees, to the folks who did this work. And a lot of it was happening while also reopening for 5 days. So thank you to the teachers and the staff and community volunteers and everybody who helped on these committees and the ones that are still out there. So we really appreciate that. And thanks for bringing forward some really good candidates for us. We love that.
We're excited.
Okay, so our next agenda item is discussing if we would like to have a retreat this coming summer, and if we're ready to sort of think about what kind of work we'd like to do with that and what shape that would like to take. I will just float it out there first to say that I think we should have one this year. We're still in that situation where things are changing fast and often. And I think, in previous years, which it feels silly to say, because I feel like it's been so many previous years, we've been able to take that sort of time off over the summer. But I think we're still in a position that touching base once a month is really important as things change and shift. So I would be in favor of us having a summer retreat. And I'm open to what other folks think about that. And if anyone has any topics they think it would be good for us to look at during that time.
What came to my mind is to understand more about the social emotional learning program.
I've also been thinking of almost like a combo platter, if you will, of what we had talked about before COVID, of sort of like the community climate. We'd kind of been going down that road. And then Sydney, some of what you propose, it's almost like a combo of the pre-existing issue and then, or not issue, but just like the climate conversation, and then moving into like the new normal encompasses so many things. I was, as you were talking about hiring the part-time social worker, I was just thinking so much to myself of how your comments about supporting families, the kids and their parents, is going to be important. We're moving into this next stage where it's almost harder because it's coming down to like value judgments and safety feelings, and everything is so politicized that I'm very conscious of moving into this next coming summer and school year with our families and us trying to come together as a community and respect each other's feelings and try to have conversations around what's best for kids, how to support. It's just like a big swirl. So I guess you could say it's a community climate conversation that I'd like us to kind of think about both back in hindsight and then projecting forward, because I think we're going to have other hard conversations, even probably before July, but there are only so many things that are resolved. So I'll just put it out there. There's like a bunch of things in that comment, but
the only thing that I would request is that if we're looking at that climate culture discussion, we need some kind of a backbone for it. So we need to do where we are all, looking at a podcast or doing a book, like a read together, or even video, anything like that. But I think we need to really focus it. So if you all want to provide suggestions, we can have something that we all get together and can share as the catalyst for that discussion.
If I floated that out there, I'll give it some thought and look around.
Mm-hmm.
What are folks' thoughts about when this would happen in July?
Just trying to look at my calendar. My calendar doesn't go to July on the wall. So. Well, we usually try and avoid the week of the 4th. and the 4th is a Sunday. So we could do the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, if you want to keep it on a Tuesday. It doesn't have to be on a Tuesday, but our usual board meeting, if we were staying on schedule, would be the 6th. And that Monday before the 5th is a holiday.
So would this be separate from a board meeting, I assume?
No, usually we just replace the July board meeting with a retreat.
I'm in support of the retreat. I just feel like we're in such a nebulous time with re-entering travel. And like you said, your calendar doesn't go to July. I feel like my brain doesn't go past today.
It sounds like folks are in favor of doing this. Why don't we plan for at our June meeting to, unless folks need more lead time than that, but at our June meeting, we could have some suggestions for that sort of like focal or anchoring document or point, and folks can bring their calendars and have some dates that could work for them for July. And this would be in place of the board meeting. I think what we have right now on the website says that we were going to have our board retreat on July 7th, which is interesting because that's a Wednesday. But we certainly don't have to stick to that.
So I'm going to throw out a newbie question here. What kind of time length are we talking about for the retreat? Is it an all day thing, or?
We've traditionally, I mean, it can be anything that you want it to be, but we've traditionally kept it to about 3 hours. So not longer than a regular board meeting.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And in the past, we've done, like maybe we've done it a little bit earlier and had a meal together or something like that. So, had a little bit more flexibility in terms of like kind of the structure of it. Okay.
All right. So back.
All right. So in
regroup
next meeting, we'll finalize. Yep.
Okay.
All right, so our next agenda item is the second reading and adoption of policies JH, IMG, and IMGA.
So these are the second readings. We've had feedback on them. It's the revision of the attendance policy. I do want to say that I've been in contact with a parent in the community about the animals in schools who asked for a suggestion, which I think makes a lot of sense, which is that the classroom experience for a child with allergies isn't just the classroom, it extends to other areas. So the request is that if there are animals in schools or if there are therapy dogs, that they are not in carpeted areas, so that we can keep that kind of dander and fur out of any carpeted areas, and that we have the ability to clean, with the preference, of course, in nice weather, being outside or maybe in the outdoor classroom, or at least in classroom or office spaces where we have the hard floor where we can make sure that it's safe for everybody. So I would be in favor of adding that language.
That sounds great. And thank you to that parent for bringing that forward. Any other questions or thoughts on any of those policies? Okay. And Sydney, that one, so which policy would that be amending? Would that be for the IMG, or would that be an IMG and IMGA?
So it wouldn't have, so when we're looking at the service animal policy, we can't make any changes to that because that's an ADA requirement. So we would only, I'm just trying to get to the right page in case you want me to put it up. We would only be amending IMG.
Okay.
So IMGA would stay as is, and that language is all disability law anyway. So IMG is, we would just add language that we stay away from carpeted areas, and that whenever possible, it's outside or in the outdoor classroom or on a floor that can be easily cleaned.
Okay, so we would need a motion for the second reading and adoption of policy IMG as amended.
Moved.
Second,
All right, we have a motion from Leslie and a second from Christine. So if you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
and Brittany, aye. And then we would need a motion for the second reading and adoption of policies JH and IMGA.
Moved.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Denise. So if you're in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie.
Aye. I was letting the dog in.
Speaking of,
Good timing.
did
And,
we have any input on the policy?
and Brittany, aye. All right, perfect. All right, so our last item for the discussion and action part of the agenda will be the area meeting. So the area meeting is next Tuesday. And
We just need to know who's going to attend from Grantham, and it is, it's your basic agenda. We're back to the basic area meeting agenda, which is a check-in to see how votes are going in the different districts on the new area agreement and plans for next year.
Is it a Zoom meeting?
It's a Zoom meeting. So 6 o'clock next Tuesday.
I already had it on my calendar, so I can be there.
I can be there as well.
All right.
Do you
And
need
if
three
anybody
of
else
us,
would
or-
like, we don't need a quorum for this one. But if anybody else would like to join, please feel free.
I think that's a Concord day for Brian, so I'd rather not try to do that.
Anything that the board in particular would like us to bring to that meeting or, get from folks from that meeting? We'll just do a general report back at our next board meeting. Okay, sounds good. All right, so our next,
We do have one more vote that we need to take. I just want to do it while we're still in the discussion and action section. You do need to officially vote to adopt the DHHS travel guidance because it's a change from our continuity of learning plan. So I don't know if you want to have any discussion on that, but it is my recommendation that we adopt it.
thank you. I meant to do that after we talked about the instructional model.
It's okay, I made a note. And
So
Brenda
what-
didn't even have to
what's
tell
the-
me.
What's the change in the travel guidance?
So we had stuck with the original travel guidance, which was a quarantine period outside of New England. And that was a lot to do with people going a lot of different places over April break, the variants, the case per 100,000 rising, our positivity rising, those kind of things. But the commissioner has said that there will be no distinction between the public school guidance and DHHS. There's a legal ruling on that officially came out. And my recommendation would be that we go ahead and adopt the DHHS guidance, which is just we follow domestic and international quarantine guidance as put forward by basically they're aligned with the CDC. So there's still quarantine for international travel. There are no quarantine requirements for domestic travel. I know,
Any other questions or discussions on that?
I know, it feels like another big change and it feels like another move forward. We did discuss this quite a bit at our progress monitoring committee, and we talked about how there are definitely certain areas that are hot, and that can be a concern, but those might not, those could be in New England. And we talked about needing to rely on personal responsibility and everybody taking the care that they need to take. I am hoping, I have to tell you, that this surveillance testing works out for us because we might at least help families have some peace of mind if they went someplace that we could do some surveillance testing for them before they come back and not have to have them go through the the full PCR test, but again, we're still researching how we can make that happen.
I think we have to recognize too that we aren't always going to know when some families are traveling and where they're going.
Mhm.
I'm in support of the change in language.
All right, so then we'll need a motion to, what would we be doing? We would be following the DHHS guidelines regarding travel.
Regarding travel. Mhm.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Leslie and a second from Ed to follow the DHHS guidelines regarding travel. So if you are in favor, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
and Brittany, aye. All right. So now we will move to the principal's report, and we have a principal's report in our board packet. And Sydney, I don't know if Kristen wanted to add anything else to that or join us for that, or if she's going to submit it as
Submitted as written.
perfect. All right. Any comments from the board on the principal's report? Any just comments for Kristen, who is joining us by listening only tonight?
I have to ask, tell me about the gong.
Oh, it was great. So Kristen installed a gong in the main office. So after people came back to school after getting their vaccination, they got to hit the gong.
I love that.
I did ask her, like, it apparently is something she just had around the house. And like, who doesn't have a gong at home, and you could just bring it in. But yeah, it was really fun for people. So it was a nice way to celebrate our vaccinations.
They do something like that at Norris Cotton when people finish their cancer treatment.
Mhm.
I think you ring a bell.
Yeah.
I still love seeing the pictures of the kids out in the woods, and we hear a lot at our house about how the woods at GVS are full of kindergartners.
I like the artwork, the faces.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you. It was a great, I mean, you could tell how much is happening at the school by the length of the principal's report. There was so much to take in. And so it was very thorough and good to see and hear. All right. So our next item is the superintendent's report.
I will basically submit my report as written, and I think we have gone over most of it in different areas of tonight's meeting anyway, unless you have any questions for me.
Oh, do you know about cases in Grantham? I haven't
We've-
checked recently.
We had a 2-week stretch where, we were staying steady, and then I think this last week we have 3 new cases. Just over, I think, in this last 7-week period. But we did have a nice stretch of steadiness there. I do know just from the notices that I get that Lebanon is still a concern, and Lebanon schools are still a concern with cases. It seems to be more in their elementary and middle level right now, though.
I wonder if we're starting to see some of those high schoolers that have been able to get vaccinated.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Sydney? Okay, thank you. All right, our next agenda item is the consent agenda. Any changes or amendments to the consent agenda?
I just had a question on the expenditures report on page 2. This was, private school tuition and residential costs.
Yep.
Do we have an out of district placement, a residential placement?
We do. Mhm. So it's only private just because it's not a public special education institution. It's technically private. So that's placed there just to be in the right accounting line, but it is we do have out of district.
So are those funds coming from the trust fund?
No, this is something that we budgeted for last year. But what you'll see is that it's budgeted in a different line. I believe it was originally budgeted under secondary tuition, under 1,200. And then for accounting, since it's technically a private institution, for the audit, we wound up moving it into the private tuition line. But the money is there, it was budgeted for.
Just because under budget, the amount budgeted, it says 0. And then there are these big numbers, so.
Yeah, no, I think if you, I'm looking sideways on mine. If you look at secondary tuition, you'll see that there was $280,000 budgeted and 0 spent. So that's where it was actually budgeted with nothing spent. So then in the next line, you'll see that there's 0 budgeted and the money spent. So they cancel each other out. It was putting that in the correct line.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions for the consent agenda? Okay, then we would need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second,
All right, so we have a motion from Leslie and a second from Christine. And if you're in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. And if you're opposed, say nay. Christine,
aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
and Brittany, aye. All right, and we do have a non-public session tonight. So what that means is the board will go into non-public and then we will come out of non-public to adjourn the meeting. And as always, I promise we won't do anything interesting when we come back to adjourn it. But if you would like to come and join us back here to watch us say goodnight, you can. Our next meeting is June 1st. And let's see, Sydney, how much, I'm trying to see what time it is. And we have a few things to talk about tonight in non-public, correct?
We do, although I do want to say that there is a potential for a vote after we come out of non-public, just so.
Oh, okay.
There is, we don't know, it depends on non-public, but I just don't want anybody to think that it's only adjournment. There is the potential of a vote.
Thank you. And I did know that. I should have said that.
That's okay.
Yep. So, do you think?
9?
Yep.
Would that be good?
So we will come back to the public meeting at 9, potentially for one vote and then adjournment. And Sydney, what are we going into non-public under tonight?
Okay, so we have to go under several different things.
Yep.
We are going in under RSA 91A3, and then it's going to be 2A and E.
Okay. So the board will leave the public session. We will come back at 9. And for the board, we do have another link for the non-public in our email. So you should follow the link that Sydney sent us for the non-public meeting to get into that one. It will be a different meeting than this. So we'll need a vote to go into non-public session under RSA 91A3 2A and RSA 91A3 2B.
So moved.
All right, so I'm going to say I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Ed. And if you're in favor of entering non-public, please say aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Christine?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Denise? Leslie?
Aye.
And Brittany? Aye. All right, so we will adjourn this meeting. We'll come back here at 9 and we will go into non-public now and we'll come back here at 9.
And before we sign off, happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yes, thank you.